Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Richard G. Medlock, and this is the Medlock Post radio show. Welcome to episode 17, and the name of this episode is Heroes. Yes, we're going to talk about heroes today. This is a show where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. Today is July 11th, 2022. And again, we're going to talk about heroes. All right. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, folks. We've just clicking along here. Disclaimer, the views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are the views and opinions of the host. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. And there are plenty of those that we're on. I'm going to give you that list. Some of these you might not have heard of, and I didn't know about them either. All right, we're on Spreaker, but you can also find the Medlock Post on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Deezer, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, YouTube, Tumblr, and this other one, it's JIOSAAVN. So Josavan, or I don't know. But anyway, we're on it. Who knows where it's going? And also, you can go on YouTube, just type in Medlock Post and can listen there. We might be doing some things on YouTube, videos on some special situations. Another thing that we've looked at, this is episode 17, and we've had a meeting yesterday, and we sit here and talked about where to go in the future and so forth, and we're still putting plans together, looking at different options. And we appreciate your support so far. Matter of fact, we got our weekly statistics this morning. We had 2 listeners out of Saudi Arabia, 1 out of Brazil, and 1 out of India. So we're making an international splash, and we appreciate that. And that happened on our my previous radio show. We had quite a few European followers, and also had some out of South America. It was really interesting. And this, folks, it's the internet, okay? And this helps these things to grow. But we're talking about the format of the show. And we're going to try this. We're going to change it up. This is the first one. We're just going to deal with one subject. And these episodes could be 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. It depends on the subject. It could be 45 minutes. Now, the show I did Friday was an hour and 18 minutes. And I think that's a little long for a podcast. And so I was looking at what I'd put together for episode 17, and it was a lot of stuff. And I thought, you know what? Let's break this up a little bit more. So as we looked at it, we actually end up with 5 shows, including this one. So this one and 4 more out of what I put together for one show. So we've already broken it up. Already have them set, and so we're recording this one today, and releasing it, and we'll just record the others. I mean, I could really do a whole week's worth of programming in one day. But there are so many things, and that could change. I mean, what we're sitting here on Monday, and what's scheduled for Wednesday could be something totally different because of events that take place. Like when the Supreme Court came down with all those rulings, Roe versus Wade, and the EPA, and guns, and religious freedom, and so forth. So those are pertinent to that immediate time. So we'll be flexible with that, and we can go in and change things quickly. There might even be times I'll just jump on and be live. I haven't done that yet, but we might do that. Just jump on and be live. So we think that's, for right now, that's a good format. And as you'll see today, we'll be focused on heroes. And one specifically, as we get to it, you'll see why that I chose that person. So that's our little movement. We're still looking to pick up another provider with a different type of format, which would be more conducive to being live. And we're just beginning, folks. We just started June 15th, putting this back together, and we're getting a lot of feedback. It's interesting. We have not had any negative feedback from any of my shows. I think that's just phenomenal, really. A lot of the feedback is people really need to hear this. This is great stuff. It reminded me of a book that I'm going to go get it off the shelf and read it. All sorts of things that are getting people to think. And that's what we're trying to do. So here's our quote. Start off the show with Doi Zantamata. Now, she is a children's book author, inspirational stuff. She has some really nice stuff. And I found this quote by her the other day, and I think you're realizing I like quotes. I have notebooks of saved quotes through all the years. Now, anyway, she says this, quote, "Sometimes it feels like we're being tested. Sometimes it feels like we're being given back-to-back, never-ending final exams with no end in sight. Just remember, you always know the answers. You always know right from wrong. Take one day at a time, and eventually you will pass with flying colors," unquote. Beautiful, beautiful quote to help us in our lives as we face all these challenges. Hey, it's just another test. I know right from wrong. Let's just one more step in front of another and keep going. Here's one more quote, a short one by John Wayne, the actor. And you'll see why I chose this one by the hero that I picked. Quote, "Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway," unquote. Now, he had a lot of great quotes, and we'll go from there. All right. And really, I had this originally put in as the opening monologue, but this is the broadcast today. So I guess this could just be today's monologue, as if we want to look at it like that. Uh, Her name is Karen Happuch Norman Turner. She was born in 1713, thereabouts. It's really not sure. And she died in 1805 in Richmond County, North Carolina. But she was born in Virginia. And her family lived in Culpeper County, or what became Culpeper County, because George Washington came out in the 1930s and was surveying the counties for Virginia. And while he was there, the Norman family, the Turner is her married name, Karen Happuch Norman, the Norman family became very friendly and became good friends with George Washington. And, that was probably an easy thing to do with him. He was just that type of person, reaching out to everyone. And they stayed in close contact, the family did, even Karen Happuch Norman Turner. Later on, the family moved to Fairfax County, and then later on moved to Spotsylvania County before moving to Richmond County, North Carolina. And there was a reason they moved down there. But I said the one move, their last move before going to North Carolina, was Spotsylvania County. Well, it's a funny coincidence that county was named after my sixth great-grandfather, Alexander Spotswood, who was the governor of Virginia from 1718 to 1721, appointed by King George at that time. So he was the governor of Virginia. So Alexandria, Virginia was named after him, Spotsylvania County, and a couple of other things. If you go into the Williamsburg Museum, I guess it's still there. There's a big life-size portrait of him is hanging in the museum. I said it's been a while since I've been there, so I hope it's still there. He carries a lot of weight in Virginia. And we'll talk about him. But we won't talk about Karen Happuch Norman Turner. And one of the reasons I picked her is she is my wife's sixth great-grandmother. And when we, in our family history search, we were up in North Carolina searching some of my family history and hers, we found her, and it's a beautiful story. So she was a hunter and a horseman. Now, those are a couple of skills that you needed in pioneer days to survive. Hunting and fishing and farming but also horsemanship. She became well known as a wonderful horse lady. She knew horses, she could train them, she could ride them, and became very well known about her horsemanship. She had children. Her and Mr. Turner had children. And as time went on, of course, the Revolutionary War began. And they were patriots. They supported the break with England. They supported George Washington and the Founding Fathers, the Declaration of Independence, and so forth. Well, when the war broke out, different battles started going on. And there was a battle in North Carolina, Guilford Courthouse. And today that is right outside of Greensboro, North Carolina. Well, this battle was General Greene and General Cornwallis. And they had met before in battle, and they actually met afterwards. And the battle was one of the longest drawn-out battles in the Revolutionary War. Well, she had a son and a couple of grandsons that went to fight in the regiment. They were part of the Virginia Regiment, and they were called down to help with this battle because it just kept going on and on. So later on, she received word that her son had been severely wounded in battle, and could she come and help take care of him? So she got on her horse with an infant child, headed to Virginia to take care of her son. He was only 17 at the time. On the way, the infant died. She buried him and moved on to take care of her living but badly wounded son. She arrived at Guilford Courthouse to find just atrocious situations with the wounded. They were basically pretty much left alone. Not much care was being given to them. So she found her son and started treating him. And there's a river nearby called the Bloody Run. I don't know why it's named after that. I'll have to look that up. But she got some of the wounded and got them near the river. And she was a smart woman. And she didn't like how the wounded were basically not being treated. So she went to General Cornwallis and said, look, this is what we're going to do. You're going to call a meeting with General Greene, and we're going to make some rules about how these soldiers are going to be treated. And there was a meeting with the two generals and her and some other people. She had recruited some nearby women to come over and help. And she says, look, we're going to set up an area over here. We want some shelter built for these wounded. I want some bathtubs brought in, or at least I think they started with one. I want a bathtub, and I want some holes put into it so the water can drain out. She had this idea, and she might have used it with her horses. So she set up a system where the river water would flow into this bathtub, and they'd put the wounded soldiers in there with their wounds, and that water would flush out the wounds and would keep them from getting infected. Well, that alone, that was a great invention at the time. And that spread. And other people started doing it around the colonies. But anyway, but she also said both soldiers from both sides will come here, and they will all be treated equally. And more women came and helped her, and basically they set up a hospital and did what they could to help the wounded on both sides. Her son recovered. He went back to battle, and then when the war was over, they all came home. She stayed until everything was over. Now, in 1902, there was a monument erected at the Guilford Courthouse National Military Park. And if you're ever in that area, visit it. It's any of these parks like this, there's a lot of history there. Go look, learn the history. But there was a dedication held that day, July 4th, 1902. It was a granite base crowned with the bronze figure of a woman clad in a costume of her time, carrying in her hand the symbol of her ministry on the battlefield, a folded towel over her arm, and a teacup and saucer in her hand, which is the symbol for peace. Now, this monument was of Karen Happick Norman Turner. This is the first monument ever erected in the United States for a Revolutionary War heroine. The first one. And they didn't say who gave the address dedicating that monument, but I want to read heart of it because it applies to a lot of things about heroes. And it's quote, "It is for me to tell you something of the brave woman in honor of whose memory we today unveil on this sacred spot the first monument ever erected on American soil to a revolutionary heroine. It's granite crowned with a handsome statue and emblazoned with words of everlasting bronze, in song and in story, in thoughts that breathe, and in words that burn. Have been told again and again the story of the virtues, the brave deeds, the sacrifice, the suffering, and the heroism of the men who fought, bled, and died in that terrible war for independence. But the story of the privation, the suffering, the daring, and the dying of the Grand Reserve Army of that war is yet untold and unsung. The women, by their lonely hearthstones, surrounded by helpless children in the primeval forest, without mail or telegraph or railroad to bring them tidings of the absent loved ones, their grief, their sorrow, their suspense, their anxiety, their agony, their death born without a murmur. They died not in the exciting, exulting rush of battle. Theirs was the long, slow, wasting, lingering death 1,000 times, 1,000 deaths. Sometimes it was cold-blooded murder. Sometimes it was the cold, piercing, cutting dagger of helpless grief. And sometimes they fell under the crushing burden of domestic care and trouble. Their battles were fought in the darkness and loneliness and silence of their homes. They heard not the marital music which thrilled heroes. They felt not the elbow touch which heroes feel in the mad rush of battle. There was never a shout or cheer to give them courage and strength. There were no medals awarded to them. No promotions were bestowed to stimulate them. Theirs was a lonely march to death. And yet how bravely and how patiently they fought to the end, no tongue or pen can ever tell. These were heroines, and whilst in village, hamlet, town, and city, from ocean to ocean, we have the stone and brass built memorials of every name, size, and kind in honor of our heroes, the mothers, the wives, and the daughters of that awful time who toiled and suffered and died for their country are unwept, unhonored, and unsung. Not only did they suffer and fight and toil, thus in their lonely and desolate homes, but these ministers of compassion, these angels of pity, whenever possible, went to the battlefields to moisten the parched tongues, to bind the ghastly wounds, and to soothe the parting agonies alike of friend and foe, and to catch the last whispered messages of love from dying lips. Ladies and gentlemen, those are some stirring words about the unsung heroes of women, the heroines from the Revolutionary War. And my wife's sixth great grandmother was one of them, Karen Happick Norman Turner. Now, Karen Happick is a biblical name. It's in the Old Testament. There was a lot of people used to carry that name, a lot of ladies. We think of the heroes that helped build this nation who have been long gone. We think of the heroic soldiers who fought in the many battles throughout our country's history. We think of heroes who paved the way for women to vote, the heroes for civil rights, the heroes of science and education, the heroes of a mother and father sacrifice for their children, the heroes of those who gave their lives to save others. The list, ladies and gentlemen, is long. Lest we forget the everyday heroes who brave their own battles but continue to take one step forward at a time. The heroes and heroines who gave selflessly of their time, talents, and treasure to help and serve those who are less fortunate. The day-to-day heroes that show and speak kindness to others, no matter the situation. The heroes that face personal challenges head-on so others can learn from their actions. The dictionary describes a hero as a person noted or admired for nobility, courage, outstanding achievements, exemplar, and champion. Well, John Wayne says courage, those that are scared to death, is saddling up anyway. Yeah, Karen Happick Turner was a horseman, and John Wayne, saddle up, folks. That's a great definition from the dictionary, but it's these everyday heroes that we need to notice. There are many quiet heroes in this world where their everyday heroism is unnoticed by you and I, but noticed by those around them. When you witness such heroic things, acknowledge to the person that someone noticed. It will lift them up and hopefully inspire you. They're out there, folks. Every day. I wrote this next, a quote. I've used it several times. I wrote this a year ago, July 4th. In 1776, our forefathers decided that freedom was worth dying for. That decision has made America what it is today. The willingness of great Americans from then until now to fight and to die for this for our God-given rights shows us the value of their lives. Let's not devalue their sacrifice by taking their sacrifice lightly. Let's remember these men and women and pay them homage for their sacrifice. Now, in closing, let me quote George Washington, speaking of heroes. This was in Circular to the States, June 8, 1783. Quote, "The foundation of our empire was not laid in the gloomy age of ignorance and superstition, but at an epocha when the rights of mankind were better understood and more clearly defined than at any former period. The researchers of the human mind after social happiness have been carried to a great extent. The treasures of knowledge acquired by the labors of philosophers, sages, legislatures through a long succession of years are laid open for our use, and their collective wisdom may be happily applied in the establishment of our forms of government. The free cultivation of letters, the unbound extensions of commerce, the progressive refinement of manners, the growing liberality of sentiment, and above all, the pure and benign light of revelation have had a meliorating influence on mankind and increased the blessings of society. At this auspicious period, the United States came into existence as a nation, and if their citizens should not be completely free and happy, the fault will be entirely their own." Let me read that part again. If the citizens should not be completely happy and free, the fault will be entirely their own. Unquote. George Washington, 1783. And that, folks, is the Medlock Post for today under our new format. May God bless America.